Ever since we first looked up at the night sky, we've been asking the same big questions. Who are we? And where did we come from? Every culture on Earth has its own story, its own tale of gods and creation. But today, we're going to explore a really fascinating and, pretty controversial twist on that ancient quest for answers. And this is the idea, right at the heart of it all. What if the beings we've worshipped for millennia as gods weren't some spiritual entities from a heavenly realm, but were actually physical visitors from other worlds? So to even begin to unpack a question that big, we have to go back, way back. We're going to travel to the dawn of civilization and start searching for clues that might be hidden in plain sight, right inside our oldest and most sacred stories. And what's so wild is that this isn't some new idea from the internet age. For thousands of years, cultures that were separated by huge oceans and entire centuries told these strikingly similar stories. Stories about powerful beings coming down from the sky. I mean, just think about it. The Sumerians, one of our earliest known civilizations, wrote about beings they called the Anunnaki. And that name, it literally means those who from heaven to earth came. Then you have ancient Indian texts describing these incredible flying machines called vimanas. And all over the world, from Egypt to the Americas, you find these massive temples built with almost unbelievable astronomical precision. So, are these all just coincidences? Or could they be echoes of some shared, extraordinary memory? And this pattern, it doesn't just stop with those ancient mythologies. Even a text as familiar as the Bible has these accounts that are just so strange they practically beg for a modern reinterpretation. Maybe not as divine miracles, but as encounters with some kind of advanced technology. Let's just take the prophet Ezekiel's vision. He described this fiery wheel coming down from the sky, glowing like polished metal, and it was accompanied by these really strange beings. Now, back then, how else could you possibly describe that except as a divine vision? But if you look at that same description through a modern lens, well, it sounds an awful lot like a close encounter, doesn't it? A metallic spacecraft and its extraterrestrial occupants. And this really leads us to the core question of this whole section. Is it possible that what our ancestors called gods or angels were actually just visitors from another world? Beings whose technology, things like flight, instant communication, maybe even genetic engineering, was so far beyond what early humans could comprehend that they could only see it as divine, miraculous power. Okay, but the clues aren't just in ancient scrolls and crumbling stone tablets. The investigation now takes a sharp turn, from history right into biology, because some of the most compelling evidence for this whole theory might be written inside every single cell in our bodies, in our very DNA. So modern genetics has shown us just how mind-bogglingly complex our DNA really is. For a long time, scientists were puzzled by these huge parts of our DNA that didn't seem to do anything. They even called it junk DNA. Now we know a lot of it has important functions. But some theorists point to these incredibly unusual, almost mathematically structured sequences within it, and they argue that these sequences, well, they just don't look like they're the product of natural evolution alone. And that kind of thinking leads to this really mind-bending hypothesis. It's called directed panspermia. The idea is that life didn't just randomly bubble up from the primordial soup here on Earth. No, it suggests that life was deliberately planted here, seeded by some highly advanced extraterrestrial civilization. And look, this isn't some fringe idea from the depths of the internet. This was actually championed by none other than Dr. Francis Crick, the Nobel Prize winner who co-discovered the double helix structure of DNA itself. Crick argued that life on Earth seemed way too complex to have just evolved by random chance in the time available. For him, intentional seeding was a very plausible alternative. So this just raises a huge, profound question. If our genetic code was in fact written, then we have to ask, who or what was the writer? The great sci-fi writer Arthur C. Clarke famously said, "Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic." So just try to imagine a civilization that's so advanced, it can write DNA like we write computer code. Two early humans, their work in bioengineering wouldn't look like science. It would look like the very power of creation itself. Okay, so we've looked for clues in our most ancient stories, and we've looked for clues in our own genetic code. So now, let's try to pull all these threads together and confront the final mystery of what this all could possibly mean. Our history is just
filled with these puzzles. Like, why do so many cultures all over the world have a nearly identical global flood myth? How did humanity suddenly make these huge, unexplained leaps in agriculture and culture? And what are we supposed to make of ancient carvings that look for all the world like modern astronauts? For every conventional explanation, coincidence, artistic license, there's this alternative view that these aren't just myths, but they're actually records of an extraterrestrial intervention.
When you get right down to it, whether the answer is aliens from the stars or spirit from the heavens, the search itself tells us something really profound. It reveals this deep, unyielding human need for meaning, our constant drive to know our own origin story. So, we're left to wonder, is our creator an extraterrestrial being, a cosmic ancestor who kickstarted life on this planet and maybe is still watching us from a distance?
Or is the answer even grander than that? Maybe the creator isn't a being at all, but the universe itself, a vast conscious intelligence that we are all just one small fleeting part of.
But there is one final, really provocative possibility. We have spent centuries looking up to the heavens, then out to the stars, and now deep into the code of our own DNA. But what if we've been looking in the wrong direction this whole time? What if that spark of divinity, that creative force we call God, was never really out there at all, but has been inside us, just waiting to be discovered all along?